Welcome to the 216 Highlight Including Changemakers. I am your co-host, Derek.
Hi everyone, I'm Jet. Our goal is to inspire, inform, and entertain with an emphasis on Cleveland sports.
So this is, we're not too many episodes into the show now, but this is a 216 first, where we're honored to have two guests instead of one as we normally do. And today we're privileged to have with us Bob Kain and Rosalynn Sumners. So Bob, for most in our audience are going to know who these guys are, but just to give the short introduction, because we could go a lot of different ways with this. You know, Bob, I think you've been such a pioneer in the sports and talent representation industry. Represented so many different people who we'll get into here a little bit. And then Rosalynn, you only happen to be, one of the greatest female figure skaters of all time. So
You're very sweet.
Yeah.
You're very
so
kind.
we're honored to have both of you guys on today.
Thank you for having us. We're thrilled.
We're thrilled to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're thrilled.
Yes.
Good. So we have a lot to get to in today's show. So we're just going to go ahead and hop right into Two's Q's. So our first segment, we'll put 60 seconds on the clock. It's just rapid fire questions. Derek is going to ask all the questions to Bob. Jack will ask all the questions to Rosalynn. So we'll go alternating questions, but that way they don't have to address, you guys each time. So Derek to Bob, Rosalynn coming from Jack. So 60 seconds on the clock. Are we ready?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, ready, go.
What city and state did you grow up in?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington. Well, the town was actually Edmonds, Washington, which is about a half hour north of Seattle.
Okay.
So I grew up in a very rainy climate. Not as much snow as you guys get in Cleveland, but I grew up in the...
Rapid.
Rapid.
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. He said 60 seconds. All right.
No,
I told you I was a talker.
That's okay.
Dream job as a kid.
Quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Fine. Favorite movie?
Oh, gosh. That's a good one. I think, what about Bob?
Okay.
Not this Bob.
Yeah.
Best golf course you've played?
Best golf course?
Yes.
Pine Valley. I happen to be a member, and it's usually ranked number one in the world.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
Tennis or golf?
Figure skating.
Good answer. Good answer.
I think tennis. Tennis.
East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast. Sorry.
Yeah.
Nadal, Federer, or Djokovic?
Nadal, Federer, or Djokovic?
I know what he's going to say.
Wow. Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. They're all unbelievable. Federer.
Let's call it there. Those are meant to be some easier questions, but some of those get to be a little bit difficult. Yeah.
Derek, you didn't ask me my favorite band.
I was about to ask you that question there, Bob. I didn't get a chance to ask you that question yet.
Well, we don't usually make it to the end of our questions.
I guess not.
It's too long.
Yeah.
Springsteen.
That's
And the E Street. That's my favorite.
Okay, perfect. Great answer.
good. Okay, our second segment we do here is review the two. So reviews in today's day and age are so important, and you guys have been into the two before, 8 here at the two before. So let's go ahead and have a shorter review the two segment because we have a lot of other things to get to. But Jack, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so Bob, we know you've eaten at the two before. How would you rate the experience, and what was your favorite item?
I thought it was an awesome experience. I was so blown away when I walked in this old car place, whatever it was, right?
Right.
So it was a wonderful, and I was lucky enough to have lunch with David and Francis Dickinson, who are 2 of your board members, and they don't get any better than that, right? So that was, and I think I had like a chicken Caesar wrap, maybe. It was very good.
Chicken wrap's very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, you want to ask both these guys a question?
Yes, here at the two, we train individuals for community employment. What do you both feel is the most important quality to be a successful employee?
You want to go
A
first?
successful employee. Wow.
You guys have both achieved a little bit.
Yeah.
Had some success.
Yeah, you had
That's a great question.
A lot of agents managing into.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what makes a great employee. I don't know, because I was in such a single sport that I was never really part of a team. Isn't that weird? I know. That's a very self-centered sport. You had employees.
Yeah, we had a lot of employees. So I think one obvious quality is you got to be a hard worker, right? Yes. And the other thing I think is critical in building any organization, you got to be a team player, right? If you're not a team player, you can't build a great organization.
See, that's what I didn't know how to do. I was never a team player. I was never a team player. I was, it's weird to be a sport where you're just you know.
But that's right.
Yeah, you only answer to yourself. I mean, I had a coach who was coaching me, but if I skated great, I could be proud of myself, and if I skated crummy, I really only had myself to blame, which is an interesting. I think there's pros and cons to that.
Oh, for sure, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really pros and cons. Yeah. Yes. You had no one to share the loss with. You had your family, but you didn't have a teammate to say, you know,
it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
For sure.
She didn't lose much, Derek. So
at least she's a winner.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's right, and there's so many valuable skills to be gained from team sports. But yeah, like you said, there's pros and cons to both. So that kind of transitions us into our guest highlight segment here, which, you know, we always enjoy the research we do for the guests that we have on the show. I think this, maybe more so than the others even still, was tremendous. And as I told you guys before the show, I think the challenge was for us to not come on here and have an 8-hour show. There's quite a few different things we could talk about and quite a few different things you guys have done. But, you know, our goal is it's not going to be an 8-hour show, and we're going to make it not an 8-hour show. But, I think these guys and everybody's done a great job preparing for this, so it's not. But we'll still cover a lot of the important things and a lot of the things that we've been so interested to learn and get to spend some time thinking through. We're excited to share that with our audience. So, okay, so kicking off our guest highlight segment here, Derek, would you like to ask the important question?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let's start with the most important stuff. Can you guys tell us how you both met?
You want to take that one?
Sure, I'll take that one.
Do it in under.
Yes, I can. So it was the summer before the Olympics, and when I was skating, we were still strictly amateur. As you've seen over the years, so many sports have changed, and kids can make money. We were strictly amateur. Like, I was not allowed to make $50 from Edmunds car wash that they did, our town did all sorts of stuff to help my parents pay for tickets to the Olympics. Okay. So I was not allowed to make money off of skating. So everyone was very, very careful. So the summer before the Olympics, we were told that we should start thinking of having a manager, because when I turned professional after the Olympics, which back then, that was pretty much it. You hit the Olympics at 19 or 20 and you moved on. There was none of this stay in for another 4 years. That's just how the sport was at the time. Time to go to Disney or Icecapades, or you become a show skater after the Olympics. So, but we were told we should hire a manager that I was not allowed to sign with, though, until after the Olympics. Conflict of interest. So we got two names. One was because of the name Dorothy Hamill, who my mom and I had looked up to and was an idol. She was my idol. Right. We hired her, or called her manager to come out and meet with us and sort of give us a spiel. And then we heard about this company called IMG, and we called and asked whoever to come out and meet with us. Yeah. So I remember one gentleman coming to our house, and I think I had like little bunny slippers on, and I was so excited to show this person my trophy shelf, which so excited about my trophies, which were nothing compared to what someone like Bob Kain had seen trophies. Yeah. So months go by, and I ended up choosing I ended up choosing the agent of Peggy Fleming, not IMG.
Well,
how about that?
Right.
How about that?
Right. So a couple of years later, when I finally did move on to IMG as a client, Bob said, "And why didn't you sign with IMG? That time we came out to your house." I go, No, I said, I just didn't really connect with the one guy that was there. And he goes, "Yeah, and who is that?" I go, "His name was Jay Ogden." He goes, "And the other guy?" And I go, I don't think there was anyone else there.
How about that?
So I didn't even remember Bob
first
came at my
impression,
house.
Yeah.
I eventually became a client, but I did not
We
sign
eventually
with
got
them.
her. We eventually got her. I remember going there. I was there, but on the coffee table was one of the Self magazine.
Yeah,
the
Self
cover was
magazine.
my client, Chris Everett. I remember holding it up and saying, "We can do this for your daughter," and she didn't even remember I was there.
No.
But we kept at it, and I got her.
Oops.
Things end up the way that they're
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And now it's a fun story.
So
you
then,
know?
so then I did sign Scott Hamilton to become our first skating client.
Okay.
And when 2 years after that, we started Stars on Ice, and I said, "Who are we going to get to be in Stars on Ice?" He said, "Go sign Rosalynn Sumners." And I said, "No, tell her agent to start a tour." And he said, "Shut up, you go get her." And we did get her for Stars on Ice, and then she became a client. And then a few years later, she became my girlfriend, fiance, and wife.
Yes, that is amazing.
Yeah. So we've been together for how long?
36 years.
36 years.
That's impressive. My wife and I have been married for 9 years this October.
Good job.
So I can understand.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time apart, though, in our marriage just because of our careers, running IMG, and
sure.
and I was always on tour, and then I was professional, and so I would say it's really in the last 10 years. I'm 60, so it's kind of from by the time I turned 50 to 60, we've spent more time now in the last, which is odd for a relationship to wait that long to spend. We're still together. We still like each other. We do.
All right, pass the test. So Jack, do you want to get more into, kind of the IMG?
IMG, yeah. So Bob, early on, I am known as a golf company, but you were an integral part of growing the tennis division as you're the director of tennis, and then you later became the CEO of the entire company. Could you explain to the audience what IMG is and how you got involved with them?
So IMG back in I'll do this quickly as I can, but late 60s, early 70s, a guy named Mark McCormick founded IMG, and he was a lawyer in downtown Cleveland at a law firm called Iron Haddon, and he was a golfer. And his first three real clients were Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Jack Nicklaus, who became three of the greatest golfers ever.
Start with three.
If you're going to start a sports management company, pretty good way to start, right? So fast forward into the 70s, they wanted to expand, so they expanded, and one of the things they expanded into was tennis. And I was a tennis player in college, University of Virginia, about 8 or 10 years after David Dickinson played at University of Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, so they wanted to get into tennis, and I was in the tennis business in New York. They ended up hiring me to be the second employee in tennis. I didn't know anybody, and my friend in New York said, "You should call David Dickinson because he played tennis in Virginia and you'll like him." So he was my first friend in Cleveland. It was pretty good connection, right?
That was what, 76?
Yeah, 1976. So, and I even wrote it down. The first year of the tennis division when I was there, our gross revenues were $600,000. 30 years later, just the tennis was a $100 million division.
Wow.
So, and at the same time, golf was still growing, and we got into team sports, and we managed people like Joe Montana and Peyton Manning and Eli Manning. We got big in football, and we got big in every sport. Then we decided if we knew all these sponsors for our clients, we should be in more than just the client management. So we started managing events. And then we started distributing television, and we started selling all the sports. We did Major League Baseball, we did the NFL, we did Wimbledon, U.S. Open, and on. They became the three pillars of IMG, selling television rights globally, sports television rights, running events globally, and managing superstars, hopefully. So that was the foundation of IMG in the 70s.
That's awesome.
Really changed the sport.
And it did, and we grew, and I think when I got there was about 150 employees maybe. When I was president and CEO, we had 3,000 employees, 60 offices, 30 countries, and almost $1 billion in revenue.
That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty nice growth story for a nice little Cleveland, Ohio company, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we'll kind of talk about here, you played quite a key role in much of that growth. I hope so. I think in research I saw Billie Jean King quoted as to say, Bob's never going to talk about Bob. Like Bob's never going to, brag about Bob. But hopefully through some of our research, and through our conversation today, our audience can get to know, you a little bit and all the things that you did. Because I think, as we found out and as we've learned as we've gone through this process, like you've played a large part in really being responsible for so much of the sports landscape, in the way that it is today.
Well, you're not, and you know what? It was a team effort all the way. But we became kind of the global leaders in the sports management business, which was due to a lot of us. And I certainly had my role. And then McCormick, who was our founder and really the king, he passed away suddenly, and that's when I became president and CEO, so co-CEO actually.
Okay, so Rosalynn, you experienced such success at a young age. I think, as you kind of alluded to earlier, the way athletes competed in the Olympics and prepared for the Olympics, it was a younger age. It was an amateur, time that those things happen. I have 3 little kids now, and we're going through competition in sports. And as you look at today's culture of specialization at such a young age and competition and the intensity, I think, that happens so often at such a young age, I think people kind of like maybe misrepresent what success is or have the wrong idea of what success would be. From your unique perspective, how would you define success?
So I think, and Bob will agree with this for sure, because he worked with so many parents of so many amazing athletes, and they were very young, a lot of these tennis players. I think my story is a little bit of an anomaly. Mine's a bit of a completely different story of, I chose it. It was an accident. It was Sunday afternoon, and I think the dads were golfing, and the moms had all these kids after church, like, what do we do? There was a free coupon in the newspaper for a free public session at an ice rink, whatever that meant. We didn't know what that meant. And I couldn't figure out how to get, in those rental skates, I couldn't figure out how to glide. And, people were going around on the public session gliding. I said, well, I kind of want to know how to do that. That's pretty cool. So then you start class lessons, and next thing you know, it's, you can take little tests. And I mean, it was all just an accident. Nobody knew, even all the way up to the Olympics, my parents still kind of didn't, they scratched their head. They didn't really know what was going on.
How did all this happen?
How did all this happen? I drove the whole train. The whole thing was my idea. I wanted to do it. I had 2 younger brothers, and it was very expensive, and I know my mom and dad were holding down both. My dad had a main job, he was a cost analyst for a phone company, but then he had a second job summer. My mom was working at the Seattle Skating Club bingo parlor, and they did everything they could. And I was not a phenom by any means. I was not some little 8-year-old that they went, holy cow, this is an Olympic champion. My coach still says to this day, I couldn't figure out how to skate backwards. The jumps the triples were never easy for me. They were always a struggle. Whereas I don't know if you watch skating now, these kids are they can triple with their eyes closed. Now they're doing quadruples, and I just look at it amazed, because they never came. A lot of it didn't come natural. I got further, and I did what I feel like accomplished what I did because of absolute pure determination and hard work. I was not one of those that just could sit at the side of the rink and like, la, 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 la. Oh, no. I always knew I had to work harder. But the whole thing was driven by me. I pushed my parents.
That's what's really...
Like, wait, what time are we getting up? I said, I want to be on the ice at 5 a.m. And they're like, huh?
Really unique, because most every individual sport champion that we ever managed was pushed really hard by a parent, most often. Right? Sometimes too hard they'd push. And Roz is one of the few world champions, 3-time U.S. champion, Olympic medalist, that was never pushed by a parent. She pushed herself, and it's really an unusual story, actually.
I had a hard coach. I had a tough coach, which my coach now, who's one of my best friends, laughs that, well, not laughs, but some of the stuff that she got away with us would not be allowed now. There's safe sport, and there's not that she did anything wrong. I'm just saying she was really, really tough. I think I got whacked on the bum a couple times with a guard because I wasn't skating hard enough or pushing hard enough. And I wanted to be a champion so bad. I wanted to be the best at this sport. I would leave her notes under her door. She still has them somewhere. And I left notes saying, be harder on me, be tougher on me, push me harder. And I'm the one that couldn't wait to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. My brother's like, weirdo. They're out in the front yard playing kick the can or basketball with their buddies, and I'm like, shut up, I'm trying to go to sleep at 8 o'clock. You know,
But
so
I think that's a consistent theme with, you look at so many of the best, right? The great athletes, it's their personal drive, they're self-starters.
Right.
They don't have to be motivated by others. You know, that comes from within, and it's who they are, and it's their passion. And
Sometimes I think my parents,
you're right.
I mean, I was still winning, you know, the little, like the competitions you take and meets you take your kids to. They were just like fun local, you know, in Spokane or Great Falls, Montana. I mean, they weren't like national meets, you know. But I kept winning, you know, and getting these little trophies, and one trophy spurred me to win the next trophy. And But I remember a couple times they came to me because there were two younger brothers, and this is getting expensive, and kind of, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because now we're getting really, and then 4 years before the Olympics, they said, now we are in this. That's the only time they didn't push. They just said, you are now in this. You're not bailing. All of a sudden to become a cheerleader at high school. I go, it wasn't going to happen anyway. But that's the only time they said, you will see this through.
But reaching,
Don't worry
you know,
about that. I'm good.
the success comes just that one step at a time.
Exactly.
You know, it's at the appropriate age level. It's, you know, driven by self. It's very interesting. Derek, you want to go ahead here? Ask Bob another question. We're, you know, this is again a unique episode for us, having two guests, kind of getting to go back and forth here and keep the conversation moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
We know you represented some of the biggest names in sports and have some amazing stories. Can you pick one or two that you want to share with our audience?
We just finished 2 weeks of Wimbledon. I don't know if you watched on ESPN, right? So it's very near and dear to my heart because it was one of our biggest clients. The event itself was one of the biggest clients in our world of IMG. And my clients, I think, won over 30 Wimbledon championships between singles, doubles, and mixed doubles.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so very, very near and dear to my heart, both the clients that won and the event itself, which is one of the premier sporting events in the world. And you know, I'll give you two little things because I just watched 2 weeks of it. I went to 31 of them in a row, and now I don't go anymore. But it feels like a lifetime ago. But one of the great ones, one of my earliest ones, in 1977, my first Wimbledon's. My clients, Bjorn Borg won his second Wimbledon. And my client, Virginia Wade, who was a British-English woman, and they'd only had one winner back in the early 60s. And they had no other champions for many years. My client was Virginia Wade, and they called her Ginny Fizz because she'd always fizz out in Wimbledon. She'd get too nervous. And in 1977, the Queen attended Wimbledon for the first time in like years and years and years. And my client, Virginia Wade, won Wimbledon, and 15,000 people sang for She's a Golly Good Fellow, and the Queen came out and presented her the trophy.
So cool.
And I'm a 28-year-old tennis agent, and I still get chills to this day telling that story. I mean, it was the most amazing thing I ever witnessed, and it was the one and only time she ever won Wimbledon. So that's a, you know, and then fast forward, my clients were lucky enough, Borg won 5 Wimbledons, and Federer won 6 Wimbledons, and Agassi won Wimbledon, and I had Billie Jean won 18 Wimbledon titles, singles, doubles, and mixed, and we had lots of Wimbledon champions. But that moment, I said, this is a pretty cool job. I stuck around for 30 years. So that was one of my coolest moments of my whole career, actually. It happened in the early days. So
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Bob, I know you talked about Billie Jean.
Yeah.
In previous conversations, you said you thought she was the most influential athlete of the 20th century.
Right.
What kind of shaped those thoughts?
Yeah. I think, you know, we talk a little bit about Changemakers. Billie Jean King changed the world, of sports world particularly, for half the population of the world. There was a thing called Title IX back in the 70s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In the United States, they made a law, basically, you had to have equality in your high school and college sports programs, right? You couldn't just have all men's and a little women's tennis team over here. Yeah. Well, Billie Jean, in addition to being #1 in the world and beating Bobby Riggs in 1973, and I'm a young agent and I'm representing her, and she basically created the Women's Sports Foundation created the Women's Tennis Association, and she was the leader of Title IX. And I'll give you a statistic, that's why I brought these notes, because I can't remember all this stuff anymore. Yeah. In the mid-'70s, 300,000 girls played high school sports in America. And after Billie Jean's fighting and equality, over 3 million girls play high school sports today. Right. So she really, and when you look at the women, when we won the Women's World Cup in soccer that first year in the Rose Bowl in 1999, they all thanked Billie Jean, because for really half the world's population, women's sports became acceptable. Women's tennis was the #1 women's sport in the world. And my clients, Billie Jean and Chris Everett and Virginia Wade and others, were the leaders of that. But it really made it okay for women. High school sports, college sports, Women's World Cup became, and it just changed the world. So to manage her as a young person, it just changed my perspective on life so much. Every mountain, she climbed more mountains than any athlete I've ever seen, and was still #1 in the world. Pretty amazing.
I think I saw she won like 39 Grand Slam titles.
She, between singles and doubles, and mixed doubles, because she was great at all of them. Yeah. Just phenomenal, and still going strong. Yeah. Never relaxed a day in her life. Still climbing mountains at 80-something years old. Yeah.
Wow. So professionally, I think you mentioned earlier this transition that individuals normally went through from Olympic age and that time. It wasn't 4 more years or another 4 years. At that time it was, as you kind of referenced earlier, transitioning to Disney on Ice or Ice Capades. How did you go from transitioning from competing in the Olympics to a new professional life?
That was not an easy transition, that's for sure. Because all I'd ever known was getting up at 4 a.m., being on the ice at 5, being probably yelled at by 5:45, and with a coach whipping me, and 8 hours a day, because we still had the compulsory figures, and then I'd go off to ballet classes, and I had acting classes, and anything that would help, because we were such an artistic sport as well. We didn't do a lot of, back then there was not a lot of off-ice training yet. There was none of this cross training, where they come off the tennis court now and they go into a gym and they do all the different, all the exercise. We didn't have any of that. I think I took aerobics in '83, for some lung support, but we didn't do any weight training, no strength training. But so then all of a sudden, I have to transition from trying to be a champion and training 8 hours a day to I'm going to skate every night across the country. But transitions for anyone is hard to go from high school to college. That's a huge transition. You guys know that. That's a whole different world of, and you're growing up. And, so I was 19, turned 20 after the Olympics, and now that's a pretty awkward age for young women anyway. I'm making this transition, and I came out of the Olympics pretty crushed and devastated and felt like a failure for not winning the gold medal. So I was dealing with a lot, but that's okay. I climbed different mountains and I just pushed through it, and I was really excited to become a professional skater, and I turned into an entertainer basically. And then you basically have to, and I didn't know what they meant when, you're going to go all the way back down here and start all the way over again. I'm like, I didn't know what that meant, but you do, because you're not just trying to land your triples or get through a program, and you're now entertaining a crowd, which is a whole different responsibility. And I loved that challenge. And you try different pieces of music, and you try different choreographers, and you're growing up, so your choreography reflected that, and you're hoping that you're worth the paycheck that IMG was paying you. And but it was a hard transition, but but I love those kind of transitions and growth. Pushing yourself to try new things, which you guys are doing, and nobody's going to get it right, that's for sure. I had, it was a tough transition. I wasn't great at it, but I learned the show must go on. I don't care how I felt. I could be standing in Mobile, Alabama, we were entertaining a bunch of school kids at a 10 a.m. show, and I'd be up on my I skated as Rosalynn Sumners, but I still came off a music box, and I'd have tears that they couldn't see, the audience couldn't see it, because I was homesick, or I felt fat in my costume, or I was whatever I was feeling. Doesn't matter, that music started, the show goes on. You don't have any excuses, right? No excuses, you have to perform, you go.
So, so much of your guys' professional careers resulted in change or things for others. So I think, it makes sense for us to jump into our Changemaker segment here. We'll get back to IMG a little bit and some of those things, but why don't we go ahead and hop into our Changemaker segment, Jack?
For sure, yeah. So Bob, one of our values here at the two is inspiring meaningful change. We know that you founded the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission which has brought in over $1 billion in economic activity to Cleveland. What would you say it was like in leading that charge to greatly impact our city?
Well, it was unbelievably great experience for me.
Yeah.
Because I moved to this town in 1976. And this town struggled in the late 70s. You guys aren't quite old enough to remember that, but the river caught on fire, the city went bankrupt. And here I am in this sports business in this town of Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up in New Jersey. I was like, why are we here? But anyway, and then we watched the city come back. And I watched leaders of the city rebuild, downtown Cleveland. And I always thought, I watch Billie Jean and I watch all these great athletes give back. I said, I'm doing well now. IMG's doing great. But how am I going to give back? And I didn't have a cause. And they came to me and said, we want to create a Greater Cleveland Sports Commission because we need to attract events and we need to attract economic impact into the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. And they said, would you consider leading that? So I did. And it was an unbelievable, rewarding experience for me because Cleveland was charging hard. The leaders of Cleveland Tomorrow organization was going great. Right. And we started going after bringing in sporting events into Cleveland. And the economic impact of that, as you mentioned, was wildly big. And I remember some of these events, we had 250 events that we brought to Cleveland, generated, what'd you tell me, like $1 billion, right? And things like the NCAA Regional and the NCAA Women's Final Four and the Division I Wrestling Championship and the Global Children's Game and the Women's Tennis Tournament. And the publicity and the attention and the economic impact was wonderful. So while I was living in this city for 30 years, traveling around the world building IMG, we weren't doing much in the city. And all of a sudden I was really helping the city my children grew up in and that we fell in love with and stayed. So it was a great rewarding experience and I think good for Northeast Ohio. So
Did you find that kind of once you got it going, the momentum started to build quickly, or was that a pretty difficult startup?
It did. This difficult startup was, why would we want to come to Cleveland? You got some good sports teams, but who helped the Cavs and the Indians and the Browns were helpful. They supported us, and they would tell potential people that we would try to get to come to our town how good a sports town it was. So it was definitely a whole community effort. It wasn't just us, but it was challenging.
What was kind of the time frame on when you founded it to when it became a success?
We started it around 2000. Okay. And within the first couple of years, we started getting some great events. So, I think by 2003 or 4, we were already considered by then. I hired a guy named David Gilbert, and everybody in Cleveland knows David Gilbert. Right.
For sure.
And that was, the greatest client I ever signed was right here, right? Turned into the greatest employee I ever hired was David Gilbert, and everyone in Cleveland should thank me for that because he's been an unbelievable CEO, and he drove that whole thing. I knew a lot of people in the sports world at the beginning, but he took over and he built it, and he built an amazing business. And quickly our reputation became national in terms of, hey, these guys know how to run events. They'll treat you great in Northeast Ohio. Yeah, and within a few years, people were starting to call us and say, we're considering, would you consider us for your event and stuff? So it took a few years, but it flipped pretty great because we had a lot of knowledge and a lot of contacts, and David was an unbelievable leader and still is a great leader.
Yeah, that's great.
There you
awesome.
go. Yeah.
Watson and Bob, who has been individual change maker in each of your lives?
Influential change maker.
Oh, wow. I probably would have to say, for me, Scott Hamilton, because not only did I compete with him and on the Olympic team with him to watch what he has pushed through, not only creating Stars and Ice with Bob, but with his cancer challenges and just what he also proved that a again, get rid of labels, right? Bob would tell you the story better, but he didn't get rehired after his 2 years of Ice Capades because the owner of Ice Capades said male figure skaters don't sell tickets. And so Scott and Bob kind of want to bet, and look what Scott Hamilton turned into. I mean, he ended up driving that whole professional skating, and I was along for the ride. I'm so blessed and thankful that I got to be on that train, and at that time of that growth of the professional sport, thanks to IMG. But Scott Hamilton, and then even with cancer and through all that, look what he's taken on with, championing cancer and his cancer cares, and he's done unbelievable work and given back. But I think he was very, and I think he was very influential in my life watching that.
So we decided to have a skating business, and I assigned Scott as a client because Chris Everett and Bjorn Borg were two of his heroes. He didn't really want a skating agent. Anyway, so back up a second. When Scott was 5, 6, 7, they thought he was going to die. He stopped growing. He had a feeding tube, and his growth was totally stunted. Right. So this Olympic champion and 4-time world champion and 4-time U.S. champion, he was 5'2" and weighed 100 pounds. Nobody thought this guy could be a world champion in any sport. Right. They took him to the, actually it was in
Toledo?
No, where in Bowling Green.
Oh, Bowling Green.
His dad was a professor there. They took him to the ice rink because they thought it might help him and to go on the skates and exercise. And this little guy turned into a 4-time world champion, 4-time U.S. champion, Olympic gold medalist. Fast forward, we manage him. He feels bad, and he's the star. He's the king of skating and stars on ice. And he calls me, and they said, I just went to the hospital, and he's still on tour. And they think they found a tumor. So I said, come here, local story. I took him to the Cleveland Clinic, and they found out he had testicular cancer, and he had not long after some benign brain tumors. So that pretty much ended his career skating, but what did he do? He created a foundation called the CARES Foundation with the Cleveland Clinic because that's who helped treat him. And we created this foundation led by Scott, and it became a whole second career for this world champion, Olympic champion.
Skated, by the way. He came back and skated after the testicular cancer.
He did.
Not sure about after the brain, but he made a big comeback. And that chemo and everything kills your body.
Yeah.
And he came back, and we did a huge welcome back Scott show in LA. It was a big cancer show on television, and they had other celebrities there who had gone through cancer, like Olivia Newton-John, and I forgot who else was there. But it was, but he came back physically. I have a crummy day, and you're like, you don't want to fight, but he kept fighting through.
Yeah. He inspired so many people, not only to be a world champion, Olympic gold medalist, but then to come and build this foundation and change people's lives, which he's raised. We've raised millions and millions of dollars to fight cancer, which his mom died, and to help with brain tumors with the Cleveland Clinic and everything. Just a phenomenal, another inspirational client for me. I mean, we talked about Billie Jean King changing the world. What Scott did from what he was and how challenged he was to what he became, and everyone thought this isn't an athlete. You can't be 95-pound, 5'2" guy. Right. 4-time world champion, Olympic gold medal.
Don't underestimate.
Unbelievable, huh?
So I think,
never underestimate.
I read, you're talking about Scott Hamilton, we read an article in preparation for this where it talks about, and interviewed Scott, and he was talking about at the time when they went away from male figure skaters, and Bob, came to him and kind of delivered the news, and you're talking through, Scott's kind of like, well, what's next? And, he says, well, Bob always had a plan. Like, Bob was always a problem solver. Bob was always an innovator. And it was never like, oh, well, Scott, here's the bad news and that's the end of it. No. Bob was always here to provide a solution. And it's like, okay, we're going to start our own thing. And, I think in this Changemaker segment, we start talking about there's so much here. The economic change that you've created in our community is tremendous. But even more so, I think, your story is one that so closely aligns with the two of how you're here to remove barriers, create opportunities, and help individuals reach their full potential, which is what we're all about here at the two. And I think, we talked about in preparation for this, a lot of times people look at the world's most talented or the world's greatest and say, well, they don't need any help, or they don't need any support, or they don't need opportunities created for them to help them reach their full potential, where that's just not the case. you know, and I think that's your story throughout when you look at Scott, when you look at so many of these others, whether it's the fashion arm of IMG, whether it's tennis and that how that was developed, but really what you were doing where you were removing barriers, you were creating opportunities, you were providing the necessary support and allowing these individuals to reach their full potential, which is what you know, we do here at the Two. Were you kind of aware in the moment that that was maybe the change that you were fostering?
Early days, probably not. As I got a little more mature and realized we were doing some good stuff, probably a little bit. And you know, because just focus on Scott for a second. He, as a young age, you know, he has this disease that they thought would kill him, stunning his growth. He overcomes that. Then he wins the Olympic gold medal. And we hired her because the only option then was Ice Capades or Disney on Ice. She went to Disney on Ice, the pretty girl, and Scott went to Ice Capades. Yeah. 2 years later, the Ice Capade president tells me, men will never sell tickets in figure skating. Yeah. So I'm not going to renew Scott Hamilton. Now I got to go tell Scott on the beach in Delray Beach, Florida, you're fired after 2 years. Spent his whole life becoming the greatest skater ever. Yeah. You're fired. And he goes, what are we going to do? And that's the story. Well, let's start our own tour. And then fast forward, he makes me hire Roz because she didn't sign with us. She becomes a star with him, skates 13 years in a row of 400 and some shows.
It also saved my life. It didn't really turn me into a star, but it saved my life because I had done 2 years at Disney. It was really rough for me. It was a rough transition, and it was not really how I wanted to skate. I mean, you were cranking out 12, 13 shows a week, sometimes 10 a.m. in Mobile, Alabama, and they didn't care if I did a double axel at 10 a.m. They were just so excited to be out of school and bring on the duck, and it was just such a weird transition. But they were my 2 years of growing up. My parents basically, they didn't coddle me anymore. Once, you know, everyone coddled through the Olympics, and then the minute the Olympics were over, boy, that door shut behind me, and it was like, bye-bye, grow up, which was the best thing my parents could have ever done. And I think my coach at the time kind of wanted to sign a contract with me that she would come along with me and have full artistic control, and that's the first time my mom ever made a decision basically for me and my life and just went, no. Like, we need to make a clean cut. She needs to grow up and start a life. So then I had to figure it out all by self, which that's what you should be doing at 19 or 20 as opposed to being coddled. And then 2 years later, I was done skating. If that's all there was in skating, I didn't want to skate anymore. My parents kind of went, like, what? Like, what are you going to do with your life? Because I didn't go to college. I got a high school education, but this is all I'd known since 7. But that was the first, there was no talk of taking care of your mental health and making decisions based on your mental health. There was none of that talk yet. You just heard it again at Wimbledon, right? With that cute Anna Samova, how she took time off to take care of her own mental health. Well, me basically quitting skating that summer, I bought a townhouse, I gained weight, I bought a horse. I was out on a horse farm with my horse, Jesse. That was me saying I'm done, and if I don't take this break, there's going to be nothing left. Because I was still reeling from losing the Olympic gold medal. I know, So that was, I didn't know I was doing it, but I took care of my own mental health. And then when we got the phone call from IMG, they're going to start this little 5-city tour, I kind of went, I don't know, I have to think about it. My parents like, say yes, say yes, say yes, just say yes, like, because they didn't know what I was going to do.
So how about, so now we look at this scenario. We took a little 5'2" skater who was fired from Ice Capades and a disgruntled skater who was no longer skating after 2 years, and we created Stars on Ice. Roz, and the first person he makes me hire is Roz, and that becomes the biggest skating tour in the history of the world. We went from 5 cities nowhere to, we were doing 80 cities in North America, in the US and Canada. They were all flying around in a private jet. These 2 fired, retired skaters, and it became national television shows. And those 2 did it. It was pretty cool. And, I got some credit for it because we kept plugging away. But to see those 2 and what we built was pretty phenomenal. As your story saying, you take something that looked like 2 people who were finished skating, and they just ended up having the greatest 10 or 15 year run in the history of in American skating.
And what's interesting is that what you guys are doing with Two Foundation is the whole time we were doing it, we didn't care that we were stars. I mean, we were still, I think, Olympians and athletes at heart. We knew we were building something, but I think we were just so happy to have a job. We were doing what we loved to do, and really in the end, that is the most important thing. Because you still go to bed on your own at night, you curl into bed, whether you landed the double axel or not, or you got that final basket basketball shot or whatever it is, you still go to sleep with your own self and have to answer to your own, whether you're on a team, right, or you're a solo athlete. You still only have yourself to answer to at the end of the day. Did I work my hardest? Okay, if I didn't skate my best tonight, well, I have to do better tomorrow night. So by the time we got to the private jet and the 2 fanciest hotels, sold out crowds, in the end, really, we were just so happy that we were still skating and doing what we love to do. That is where the love started at 7, and that never changed. You know, all that other stuff is just perks, as you know. If you love what you're doing, as you guys know, that's the most important thing, and you're creating something.
Absolutely.
And one other thing, as you sit here in this beautiful building, Stars and Ice, so we started like in 1986, and the first year I remember we went to Philadelphia. This was one of my stats that I'd always do. We had a crowd of about 1,500 people, and the gross ticket sales were $16,000 for the first time we went and skated. Scott Hamilton and Rosalynn Sumners in Philadelphia. Fast forward 12 years later, we skated in Philadelphia, Stars and Ice. The gross gate was $400,000, and there were 16,000 people in the audience. That's building something pretty amazing that these guys did, and not too different than sitting in this building from what you guys began with. So it's pretty cool to have those journeys and to feel
you have the
good.
Vision, and you have the vision.
Don't forget to reflect and look back and appreciate it once in a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, different population of individuals. We're all here to serve people. You're creating the framework and building in the necessary supports for Rosalynn to be successful and, you know, reach her full potential and have a great job like you talked about. And, you know, that's what we're here to. But Rosalynn was the star. Just like our graduates.
Still is.
Just like our graduates are the star at the 2.
Yes.
You know, we're just here in the background like Bob was.
Oh, you guys are stars.
And, you know, no, it's
you guys building this, you're stars. So.
I think as long as you love what you, I mean, that's the most important thing, as you said. The hard work, for sure, the hard work.
Hard work.
But you really have to love what you do. I mean, if you're not loving what you do, then to me, when you ask like, how do you determine your success? You know, that's success. Do I still love it? Am I still pushing myself? Am I still loving it? Am I still giving back? And that to me is success.
So, kind of fast forward a little bit. You know, you guys sell IMG, move on from IMG. You come on board with the Browns. I think as we transition here to our final segment of Cleveland Sports Overtime, this is a little more of a Browns-focused overtime because of you know your professional history. Jack, you want to kick us off here in our final segment?
Yeah, so Bob, we know that you were an executive with the Browns for multiple seasons. Could you tell us about your role with the team?
Al Lerner bought the Browns, actually brought them back to Cleveland. You know the history. They left town, and then Al Lerner, big Cleveland, successful business, brought them back. And he passed away, and his son Randy became the chairman and primary owner of the Browns. So I was pretty well finished with IMG, and he came to me and said 2 things. He said, 1, I need a little bit of help because I don't know anything about the sports business. 2, I want to buy a soccer team in the English Premier League, the biggest soccer league in the world.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, and we had a huge operation in London because of Wimbledon, the British Open. We represented a lot of European talent. So I said, yeah, I think I can help. I'll help you buy a team in the English Premier League. And we ended up buying Aston Villa, which was Birmingham, England's biggest team. And it was a great experience. And then he said, also, will you help some with the Browns? So I did help some with the Browns, but they were definitely further along. And I didn't do as much for the Browns. I became a huge fan. One of the greatest things, one of your guests was Bernie Kosar. And I sit in the owner's suite with Randy and Jim Brown when he was still alive, right? The greatest Brown of ever. And Bernie Kosar, who was kind of a hero to my 2 children as they grew up in Cleveland. And I got to listen to Bernie talk about football, and that's when I really learned what football was about. But it was a great experience after 30-some years with IMG. You know, it turned into a nice thing, and then you know, and then I moved on from that, and I started doing some other stuff. But that was a wonderful moment, and became lifelong Browns fans. And one last thing, I'm in Miami at a big tennis tournament. My kids are there on spring break. They're little kids still. They're like 12 and 9. And their hero was Bernie Kosar, who's throwing a football on the beach in Miami. is Bernie
I remember
Kosar.
that story.
And I go over and I hear Bernie, Bob Kain, you know, because in the beach of Miami, he might not remember me at that point. And I said, I'm sorry to bother you, but these are two of the biggest Cleveland Browns fans in history, and they got to meet Bernie Kosar on the beach in Miami. I'll never forget that.
That was a lot of fun getting to talk with Bernie. You realize how little you know about football when you sit across from Bernie and you start talking. Yeah.
And I love seeing him on your show, and he looked healthy, and it looked like he was thinking clearly and was into it, and all the good things. It was all positive.
Yeah, he was on wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
Do either of you guys have any thoughts on the Browns move to Brook Punk?
Well, Roz probably doesn't have a lot of thoughts about that.
No.
Here's my thought on that. You know, I think there's an emotional attachment to downtown, and this, you know, and having football downtown. But here's my take on it. Really, we're gonna have a beautiful new, unbelievable stadium. There's only 8 home games a year of football. You know, you need downtown. You need the 81 baseball games. You need the 41 home basketball games to stimulate downtown economic impact.
Yes.
Football in Northeast Ohio is obviously huge. But it was only 8 or 10 times that everyone went downtown to go to a game. So keeping the Browns here, keeping the Browns healthy, having an unbelievable facility that will do things besides just have the Cleveland Browns is a huge win for Northeast Ohio. And they'll probably tear down the stadium and redevelop the beautiful lakefront. And it'll probably, I may not be here long enough to see it all, but you'll all probably see it. It'll probably be a wonderful win-win for Northeast Ohio. So new stadium was necessary to be a big league NFL franchise, and to have it domed for us that used to go in that cold weather in the snow, and my kids with 3 layers of overcoats. I think it's a little wimpy playing football indoors, but I think good for Cleveland and good for Northeast Ohio. So yeah.
What about
the
British Open? You have a pick for this week?
Yeah.
British Open.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't really. I don't have.
Scotty.
You know, Scotty Scheffler is. Scotty Scheffler is a prohibitive favorite. Right?
Yeah.
He's gotten so great, and actually to be so great and such a nice, down-to-earth guy is pretty unusual. But you know, so I hard to root against him. You know, he's got to be the favorite.
It was fun to see Rory McIlroy win again, though, wasn't it?
It was.
I mean, that's to wait so many years and to not give up and to keep pushing. And I think that's another thing that we talk about is you just don't give up. I mean, that was pretty emotional and pretty exciting to watch that.
Just the
exhaustion,
After so many years
you can see how much it weighed on it.
of wanting it, and
So I take that'd be a great winner too, right?
That'd be amazing.
In British, he's playing.
Scottish Open last week.
That'll be fun.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, this has been a real.
How do we do?
Real.
I have one more thing I just want to ask. Well, I want to talk to you guys, and I don't know if this was a question or if it's coming off of a question. Some of it was what Bernie Kosar was talking about, what he struggled with, and labels, and I got a pretty good dose of ADD with probably a couple H's in there, and it showed in skating in certain ways that I don't think we notice until now looking back. I rushed my takeoffs. It was this. It was that. And it was about pushing through that, but watching Anna Samova and talking about taking these breaks and these kids who, and what was the other, Osaka, and mental health issues. But what I also think is interesting is that a lot of these athletes now, and maybe even other kind of celebrities in the world, are starting to come out and talk about things that they deal with on a daily basis that nobody ever really talked about or showed. And I think the audience members listening to this, we put all these people on such pedestals. Well, they're perfect, whether they're LeBron James or they're, or the tennis players, and even at my level of whatever, I wasn't a superstar, but we all definitely deal with and push through things that we don't talk about. Insecurities and some depression and some whatever, and we hide it well, and then everybody thinks, oh, well, they've got this perfect life because they're perfect and they're on Stars Nice, and you're like, I'm very much of an introvert. You know, like I can go out and skate every night in front of 10 to 12,000 people, but boy, when it comes time to come home, those doors shut and I can hardly make it to the grocery store and I'll have anxiety attacks. You know, not as much now at my age, but when I would come home from skating every night in front of for 8 months in front of 10,000 people, and then I could hardly make it to the grocery store because I was so exhausted and needed to just close back in and be like alone.
Is there like a specific piece of advice that you would give the young aspiring athletes coming up?
Well, I think more than anything, you just have to really love what you do. You know, I mean, we know how hard you have to put the work in it, and you really have to want to do the hard work yourself. You know, you have to be fairly self-motivated. That doesn't mean you can't have people in your life that help push. I mean, my mom was there when I needed an extra little push, or, you know, I mean, I had to have a choreographer that would say, you can put, you know, I mean, you have to have people there to help you along the way. You just, it's sad to listen to these stories where there are parents who, they want it more than the kids want it, you know? And if a kid says, I don't want to play in a game this weekend, I mean, until you're 4 years in the Olympics and you've invested that much money and time, then you say, no, you're going for 4 more years. But I think it's okay if a kid said, like Anna Samoa said, I just needed to take a break, and she was quite young.
Well, I think at the heart of it, like our message here at the Two is people are people. We all have strengths and we all have challenges. And I think if you look at different populations of people, there's assumptions made about everybody, right? There's assumptions made about people who the label is made the main thing, and it's a negative thing. You have this diagnosis, you have this, and it's limiting. Or what you're talking about at the other end of the spectrum is, well, you have these strengths, so that means you don't have challenges. You know, just like you discount people's strengths on this end because you have challenges, you can't discount people's challenges on this end because they have strengths. You know, at the end of the day, we all meet in the middle. We're all people. We all have strengths and challenges.
But why is that such a struggle for people to understand? Why is it so hard for society? Do you guys have an answer for that? I'm going to ask you.
I don't have an answer, but
I mean, it's definitely sad to answer that question, to see it that way. And if you said that way, I mean, I don't know why we live that out, whatever, because we, as Christian said, was we all have strengths, not weaknesses. And for some people, they do or don't understand, because again, we all do have that. I mean, the society that we are living in, you just don't know. I don't know why we live that way.
Well, I think it's everybody's assigned a label. This is the society we live in. And when your label is a super positive one, like, oh, the world's greatest figure skater, there's a lot of assumptions that go along with that. When your label is one that's viewed with limitations and in a negative way, there's assumptions that go along with that. And we feel like that one label tells the whole story where it doesn't. You know, and I think dialogue, I think conversation like this helps dispel those labels and those stigmas, and they fall away. And at the end of it, we realize we're all people with strengths and challenges. And when we all do life better together and we talk about things, you know, it's the human experience.
Yeah, I think people, like Tristan said, they have to have dialogue. They have to educate themselves, and education's most important. People don't like others because they're different, but I think if you just get to know, you gotta accept, you gotta get to know them before making a judgment.
We have a couple gifts here. So for Rosalynn, we have one of our Guardians theme, red, white, and blue. Together t-shirts, Life Without Labels.
Life Without Labels. Love it. Love it.
That's right.
So much. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Bob, we have our Browns themed together t-shirt for you. So thank you very much, Rosalynn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
You guys, thank you.
I love it.
You working out?
Thank you everyone so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and be sure to follow our socials so you don't miss out on any future content. Derek, what do we always say?
Gotta make a difference together. Thanks for watching.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you guys.